That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, let's go through and dive into our week 14 running back rankings. And this week's not looking pretty. I mean, a lot of the good running backs have just brutal matchups. So I would love your opinion down there in the comment section. And one other thing we said with the video this morning, please, I want to take just a temperature of the room. I want to have a good idea of who has been listening to this channel the entire season in your records in your fantasy leagues. So please, regardless of if you have a very good record, a very bad record, if you have been listening to this channel for a long duration this season, please go down to the comment section. I don't need an explanation of saying so-and-so got injured. We've all dealt with injuries. Just please let me know what your record is down below, and I really am interested to see that. And of course, before we get into this video, we have to give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats for the people who left those comments. These are going to be Mobine and Evan this week. Of course, thank you all so much for being a part of the flock. Every time you drop that like, leave that comment, get entered in to win a free Fantasy Flock Network hat. And really quick, as we go through this video, you will just see a couple player props put up on the screen where you could go through and bet the over-under on those players, whether it's going to be their yards, touchdowns, regardless. And no, you can't click on the screen, bet it there, but where you can bet those, available in almost every single state in the United States, will be Underdog Fantasy. And over there on Underdog Fantasy, when you use promo code FLOCK and you sign up, they'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. So please take advantage of that. And let's go through, let's dive into this, and let's lead it off with the running back one tier. And I think we only have one player here. This is going to be Austin Ekeler. Now with Austin Ekeler, great matchup against the New York Giants. We're not going to talk too much about the running backs at the very top because obviously you're starting these guys regardless. It's fun to talk about expectations. We don't need to discuss too much in depth with Austin Ekeler. But the reason he's going to be our running back one here in his own tier is A, Jonathan Taylor on bye. So that's one reason that this running back position is looking really bad. And B, with Austin Ekeler, he has been in his own tier. You're looking at any other running back not named Derrick Henry, not named Jonathan Taylor. And Austin Ekeler is actually right up there. I mean, and he is averaging 3 points per game more than the next best. It's a good matchup against the Giants as well. Don't have to be too worried about this Giants defense. With Ekeler, he's had that same exact role in the receiving game all season. Safe option. Let's have him at 1. Let's stop wasting time. Let's go down to tier 2. And now in tier 2, this is where we could say we have some pretty difficult decisions because we have some tough matchups, yet at the same time, we have some great running backs. And let's lead it off here with Joe Mixon at our running back 2 spot. Now with Joe Mixon, this past week, definitely disappointing. And this matchup in particular, going to be a pretty tough matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I will say the 49ers have a better pass defense than a run defense, just like what we saw this past week against the Los Angeles Chargers, but still, that really limited Joe Mixon to the point where, I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals offense, they weren't able to get going. Joe Mixon had a total of 0 receptions out of the backfield. He only had 19 carries as well. Now, he gets 11 fantasy points, but honestly, he gets there with the rushing touchdown. Now, Joe Mixon, if you're looking at, I mean, the past 6 weeks, he has scored a touchdown every single week. You know that touchdown rate has to come down some. You know what? With this being a tough matchup, I lied to you. We're not going to have Joe Mixon at 2. Instead, we're going to have Najee Harris at 2. With Joe Mixon, he can go down to 3. I think it's a tough enough matchup against the 49ers. And with how Cincinnati struggled this past week, let's not put him there. And now let's go over to an offense with Najee Harris and the Pittsburgh Steelers that you know they're going to be struggling every single week. The difference is I like the matchup we have against the Minnesota Vikings run defense. And at the same time, with Najee Harris, I think he is a safer running back that's less game script dependent. Because with Najee Harris, you know that you can see the 21, 26, 22, 26, 23, 24. I mean, we have so many games over 20 carries for Najee Harris this year. And that's going to be in games that are close. That's going to be in games where the Pittsburgh Steelers are leading. And then also, you know that unlike Joe Mixon, he's a very safe role in the receiving game as well, even if the Pittsburgh Steelers fall behind, which is entirely possible with how bad this offense is. So let's have Najee Harris at 2. We'll have Joe Mixon at 3. Not a big deal. Like we said, you're starting all these guys regardless. Leonard Fournette will be a running back for the last guy in this tier. With Leonard Fournette, I mean, obviously, you love the offense. You love the role in the receiving game, especially, 8 targets this past week. So it doesn't really matter when Leonard Fournette only comes out this week and gets 13 carries for 44 rushing yards and no rushing touchdown. I mean, yes, I mean, you can sit here and cry about that, but in reality, who the hell cares when he's walking away with 7 receptions? So if you just add those 7 receptions on and maybe convert those over to just rushing yards and just kind of show how much of a cheat code these running backs that catch the football are, that's an additional 70 rushing yards. That's like bumping up his 44 rushing yards up to 114. And then also you see that that's always going to come along with those receiving yards, an additional 48 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown at the same time. He just has a very safe role. He's seeing pretty much every single snap in one of the most productive offenses in the NFL. Now, I am worried. He has a tough matchup this week going up against a very good Buffalo Bills defense. I'm recording this right before that game that we have for a Buffalo and New England. Maybe something changes. I think we have Leonard Fournette behind Najee Harris and Joe Mixon at our running back 4 spot, just because this is going to be a really tough matchup. Now let's bump it down a tier and let's go over to our running back 5, who has a great matchup in Alvin Kamara. I am expecting that Kamara is going to be back this week. But remember, before the Alvin Kamara injury, we were coming through and we were saying to sell high on Alvin Kamara. We said to sell him for Christian McCaffrey, RIP. We said to sell him for Jonathan Taylor, sell him for Najee Harris, back when you were able to make those type of trades. And with Kamara, what was the reasoning that we were doing so? Not because we were trying to predict an injury. Of course, we were never going to be able to do that. But because Taysom Hill in the New Orleans Saints offense. And you see this past week with how Taysom Hill on Thursday night against the Dallas Cowboys comes out, and he's not that great of a quarterback for the Saints. And at the same time, he is going to be stealing a lot of the production away from the other running backs here. Now, of course, Alvin Kamara did not start in this game, but you know who started? Mark Ingram. And with Mark Ingram here, we had a couple of weeks where you got to see him with Trevor Siemian, with Jameis Winston. And you got to see that, I mean, yes, this running back was still going to be getting targeted out of the backfield. I mean, 5, 7, 8 targets. At the same time, 9, 14, 16 carries. The workload's there for that running back in the offense when you have a pocket passing quarterback option that's not going to be going out and rushing for 100 yards himself. Now, this past week, you get Taysom Hill in here, and instead of Mark Ingram scoring 11, 20, and 17 fantasy points, he instead drops to 3. The reason for that is the targets out of the backfield drop to 2 targets, and at the same time, I mean, with Taysom, he can run the ball on his own. So, just like what we discussed last year with Alvin Kamara, whenever Taysom Hill was taking over then, I mean, yes, you have to just bump down your expectations, given the fact you'll have less targets out of the backfield, and Taysom Hill can vulture rushing touchdowns at the goal line at the same time. So with Alvin Kamara, yes, he has by far and away the best matchup out of the top 5 running backs here. But still at the same time, I want to be worried about the New Orleans Saints. His first week back in, maybe he splits this backfield as well with Mark Ingram. I think you could make an argument to have Kamara lower than this. I'm pretty much just paying the man his respect, and you have to start him if he's coming back in and healthy this week. And now our next running back will be Alexander Madison going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. With Madison, we had him as our running back 3 a week ago against the Detroit Lions based on a couple things. A, the projected opportunity. B, the matchup. And the opportunity came through. He had 25 touches in that game against the Detroit Lions, which is exactly what you're expecting. 21 fantasy points as well, so a great week from Alexander Madison. I mean, he didn't get up to the 28 fantasy points that we saw the previous time that Alexander Madison was able to start against the Detroit Lions. Now, this will be a tougher matchup going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, but I mean, with the Steelers defense, they have a better pass defense than they have a rush defense, and at the same time, with no Adam Thielen, it's a possibility that this team decides to go out there and lean on the run. With Alexander Madison, you know you're going to be getting 20 plus touches. So have Alexander Madison here as a mid running back 1. Elijah Mitchell will be our running back 7 going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. With Elijah Mitchell, I was wrong this past week. We were coming out with the possibilities saying that JaMychal Hasty may take a jump up and see about 20% of the snaps in the San Francisco 49ers offense his first week back and healthy. And we were saying that would take Elijah Mitchell down from being a running back 1 to maybe a high-end running back 2 that you were starting regardless. But no, we were wrong about that. I mean, Elijah Mitchell comes out and he plays every single snap. I believe you had a combined 4 snaps played between the combination of JaMychal Hasty and Jeff Wilson, which is absolutely nothing, of course. Go through, start Elijah Mitchell everywhere you can. And the last running back that we will have in this tier at running back 8 will be going up against the Detroit Lions. Had the breakout, the full-on breakout. Y'all know I could not be more excited about this. Javonte Williams. Now, with Javonte Williams, if you do not have Melvin Gordon playing in this game, Javonte Williams is going to be going up our rankings from here. Please, please, please understand that this is me going through trying to make these rankings on Monday night, not knowing if Melvin Gordon is going to be playing this week. And we have to find a median spot to put Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams, the running back 1 overall this past week in a game where the Denver Broncos couldn't move the ball down the field against a much improved Kansas City Chiefs defense. It's not going to be the case against the Detroit Lions, who have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. If Javonte Williams is the feature down running back here with no Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams goes up and he bumps his way up to running back 5. Javonte Williams would be a top 5 running back in that instance. Y'all know how much we've loved Javonte all season. Now, I will say, if Melvin Gordon does come back, Javonte Williams has to fall from here. Javonte Williams will still be a running back you have to start in a great matchup against the Detroit Lions. I wouldn't expect Melvin Gordon to come back and have that same exact role that he did previously, but still, you could go through and you could play Javonte Williams as a mid to high end running back too. So this is going to be a median ranking where we are waiting for more information. You know, we'll be live streaming every single night for the people subscribed to the channel. That way we can give updates to just injury situations as we go through the week. But for now, we will have Javonte Williams at running back 8. No Melvin Gordon, move him up to running back 5. Melvin Gordon playing, move him down to about running back 13. We'll get to that range in a second. Now, our next running back in the following tier will be James Conner. With James Conner here, a very similar situation. We have to wait to see if we have Chase Edmonds. It sucks to say with James Conner, you know he's going to be a bell cow running back in Arizona. You know this is going to be a running back that you have to start every single week, that you have no Chase Edmonds because his role here is just completely changed. I mean, with Kyler Murray coming back in, you get Kyler Murray vulturing a couple of those rushing touchdowns away. It doesn't really matter. You get James Conner with 20 rushing attempts, 75 rushing yards. I don't love this matchup against the Los Angeles Rams because I think this will be a little bit of a different game flow where you actually have the Arizona Cardinals having to throw the ball rather than just run the ball consistently with James Conner. I want to point that out, but still, James Conner, you've seen him consistently get to 20 touches every single week pretty much with no Chase Edmonds here. I think he's a very safe option to go through and start. Now, our next running back has a tough matchup on paper, but I mean, he is a hybrid player. We talk about this every single week. Doesn't matter what his matchup is. Cordell Patterson. Now, Mike Davis does see more snaps than Cordell Patterson this past week, which honestly, I couldn't care less about. Now, it sucks that Mike Davis steals one of those touchdowns away from him. Definitely that sucks. But with Cordell Patterson, this is 3 weeks in a row now that Mike Davis has seen more snaps. Who the hell cares? It doesn't matter with Cordell Patterson. When he's on the field, he's getting the ball. When Mike Davis is on the field, they don't care about him. Like they're not putting Mike Davis on the field to go out there and run the ball 15 times a game with Mike Davis. Cordell Patterson still getting the valuable touches here. I mean, he did have 5 targets out of the backfield this past week. He had 13 carries, a very similar workload to what he had 2 weeks ago against the Jacksonville Jaguars, came away with 27 fantasy points. Now, like we said, it's a tough matchup going up against a good Carolina Panthers defense, and obviously this Atlanta Falcons offense has been horrendous so far this season. But when you have this role in the receiving game, that's going to be a much safer running back to go through and play than someone that's mainly relying on that touchdown upside. Now, our next running back in this tier will still be a top 12 RB for us. Is going to be Antonio Gibson with no J.D. McKissick. Antonio Gibson looking like a bell cow running back. And Thomas, I'm so sorry. I don't know how hard it is for you to do this. Would you mind switching Antonio Gibson and Cordell Patterson real quick? We have to have Antonio Gibson in our top 10 running backs here. It would be fraudulent if we did not, with Gibson coming out completely changing his role in this offense. He sees a season high in his snaps. He sees a season high as well with just his, actually, I lied to you. He saw that season high against the Seahawks with his touches last week, but nonetheless, against the Raiders, now this is back-to-back weeks with over 20 fantasy points for Antonio Gibson. 6 targets out of the backfield, 23 carries at the same time. He is transitioning over to that second-year David Johnson level running back. That's kind of what you knew his upside was. The issue was J.D. McKissick being in that same offense. Now, I will say I am worried about the offense in general. I don't necessarily think this is going to be a team that has a lot of trips to the red zone, but still, we can say the same thing about someone like Cordell Patterson, and the Antonio Gibson workload's a lot safer. That's why I think we have to have Antonio Gibson one spot above Cordell Patterson, but you're definitely playing all these guys. And now our next tier down, starting off at running back 12, also going to be changing his own role in this offense. Josh Jacobs going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, obviously, this Chiefs defense looks significantly better, and I know this maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. I think we want Darren Waller back for Josh Jacobs because we have discussed this. But with the loss of Henry Ruggs in this offense for the Las Vegas Raiders, this is a team that without Henry Ruggs has one game scoring more than 20 fantasy points. They do not have enough weapons in this offense. They do not have enough speed. They do not have the ability to stretch the defense, and opponents are able to go and stack the box against Josh Jacobs. Now, without Kenyon Drake. Josh Jacobs sees a career high in his targets and receptions, and it's not even close either. He smashes his previous career high. Now, with that being said, I don't necessarily want to be viewing Josh Jacobs as someone that's a bust-proof running back because this role in the receiving game can be going away sometime soon. We're definitely having him as a top 12 guy, though. You definitely have to go through and play him. I just don't know if we can put him in the same range as Antonio Gibson just yet, because with Jacobs, we do have a lot of data to look at him and say that he's not a great pass-catching running back out of the backfield. And also at the same time, like we've already said, I'm worried about this offense not necessarily being able to effectively push the ball down the field and have trips to the red zone, which the touchdown upside is always why you liked Josh Jacobs. Now, our next running back, no, I did not miss him. We're going to go over to Nick Chubb going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Last time we saw Nick Chubb here, it was a pretty brutal spot against the same defense. This is a very good defense. Last time we had Nick Chubb going up against the Baltimore Ravens, 8 carries, 16 rushing yards. And remember, Kareem Hunt, a running back we'll be talking about later on in this video, it was his first week back from that calf injury. His first week back, we're not necessarily expecting Kareem Hunt to have his usual workload in this offense, which he didn't. That's why we were saying you don't play Kareem Hunt. But now that Kareem Hunt has had an additional bye week to go through and rest that calf injury, I'm expecting that Kareem Hunt expands his role in this Cleveland Browns offense. Nick Chubb had his career high in targets this past week with 4 targets out of the backfield. That's not going to keep up. I think you have to be worried about both Kareem Hunt taking the usage in the receiving game as well as Kareem Hunt taking some of those touches at the goal line. And it's a brutal matchup against one of the best run defenses in the entire NFL with the Baltimore Ravens. So I would be avoiding Nick Chubb where we can. Now, our next running back in this tier, someone that we just had to move down our rest of season rankings, will be Saquon Barkley. Now, with Barkley going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, you really need Daniel Jones to come back in. With Daniel Jones, this is a quarterback that isn't great, but he's significantly better than Mike Glennon. You knew automatically when you had Daniel Jones getting ruled out this past week, and then all of a sudden, Vegas came through and moved the New York Giants to have the lowest implied team total of any team back in week 13, that Mike Glennon in this offense was going to be a disaster, and you had to lower your expectations for Saquon Barkley. Now, I was still telling people to go through and play Saquon Barkley because we were saying that he can still go through and see 80 to 90% of the snaps in his backfield. And with that kind of workload, it would be fine to play him, just knowing that Saquon Barkley can come out and he can see 9 targets. He can also see 20 carries. Well, that doesn't happen. Devontae Booker actually splits his backfield with Saquon Barkley last week, which is devastating if this is going to be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Now, it's a really nice matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers. You need Daniel Jones, though. You need a way to move the ball down the field. I think Saquon Barkley is a running back too until further notice. And then also, our next running back in this tier, Ezekiel Elliott, another big name running back that I think we need to be lowering our expectations with until further notice. With Zeke, I'll just come out here and say, I don't necessarily know if it's the injury. I don't know if it's the workload he's had in his entire NFL career. I don't know what it is. Tony Pollard looks better. Tony Pollard looks better than Ezekiel Elliott. With Zeke coming out this past week, 13 carries, 2 receptions. The week before that, 9 carries. The week before that, 9 carries. The last time Ezekiel Elliott saw 20 carries in a game, the last time he saw 20 touches in a game was week 8. Last time he saw 20 carries was week 5. The workload's not the same. The offense is fantastic. Not a good matchup against the Washington football team, who does have a good run defense. You're still playing Zeke over Tony Pollard because you're expecting him to be the starting running back. All reports are saying Zeke sees a full workload. Hopefully he's healthier now that he has 10 days to rest. I think you have to lower your expectations for Zeke. He's going to be a mid-running back too for us until further notice. And our next running back will be David Montgomery here. With David Montgomery at running back 16, you know what? Thomas, I hate to keep doing this to you. But I need to make sure this list is, as close to accurate as I can get it. And as we talk through this out loud, it's a really good process for me to be able to go through and kind of make changes with these rankings as we can make arguments for and against given players. We have to move Saquon Barkley down further. There's no reason that we can have Saquon Barkley over David Montgomery whenever David Montgomery is playing in an offense that's just as bad, yet David Montgomery has a larger workload. So let's move Saquon Barkley down to running back 16. Let's move David Montgomery in the same tier. We're going to have David Montgomery in the same tier. Let's just move Saquon Barkley back down. And then we're going to have David Montgomery one spot ahead of him. David Montgomery will be going up against the Green Bay Packers. Very worried about this matchup. But what we just discussed last week with our thought process on someone like Barkley is with David Montgomery, this will be a running back that, yes, is playing in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. I mean, everybody knows that. But when you're getting 80% of the touches, 90% of the touches in your backfield, and you're a running back that can play on every single down, can see touches in the receiving game, can see the work in the red zone, you have to be someone you're considering in fantasy. It's the 2020 version of someone like James Robinson. So I think we have to have David Montgomery over Saquon Barkley because Montgomery's seeing more touches in his own backfield. He doesn't have someone like Devontae Booker cutting in. And now, so let's go past David Montgomery, then past Saquon Barkley right after him. And let's go to Aaron Jones at our running back 17 spot. With Aaron Jones, not a great matchup against the Chicago Bears. With Aaron Jones, I will tell you right now, we are probably going to have him much higher than this in our rankings next week. I want to be just a little hesitant. I know a lot of people are going to be asking us this week. A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones. In a full PPR format, I am still going to be assuming Aaron Jones has the usage in the receiving game and the usage in the red zone. I know the week before the bye week, that was not the case. I know that week going up against the Rams, you had A.J. Dillon dominating touches with Aaron Jones active. But that was Aaron Jones' first week back from an injury that he was not supposed to play that week from. The initial reports were saying that Aaron Jones was going to miss that week. I had no assumption that he was going to be able to play. I think he just rushed himself back. I think he went back because it was a really important matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. I think now Aaron Jones probably is fully healthy after having a week of rest. And I imagine that Aaron Jones does go back to being the running back one in this offense. We'll talk about A.J. Dillon a little bit later on and what we're expecting with that A.J. Dillon role. Now, running back 18, Darrell Henderson going up against the Arizona Cardinals. With Darrell Henderson against the Cardinals, I think that you should be pretty damn excited if he is able to come back and he's fully healthy. The reason I'm having Darrell Henderson so low, this is a Monday night game. With this being a Monday night game, I think you have to be a little concerned with what happens if Darrell Henderson isn't cleared by Sunday morning. What happens if we're in a scenario where we don't know if we're getting Henderson, we don't know if we're getting Sony Michel, and you have to make your start-sit decisions from there. And not even to mention the fact that Sony Michel looked like a pretty good running back this past week. And if Darrell Henderson's not 100% healthy, who is to say that he goes through and he gets that usual workload back? Maybe this is closer to a 70-30 split between Henderson and Sony Michel. And it's one of the tougher matchups you're going to have against the Arizona Cardinals. And now our next tier of running backs will be going down to running back 19. We'll have Clyde EdwardsHelaire going up against the Las Vegas Raiders here. Now with Clyde EdwardsHelaire, this is a running back that, I mean, this past week has an okay game of 11 fantasy points against the Denver Broncos. The workload looked fine, 14 carries, 3 targets out of the backfield. I actually think that's about exactly what you should be able to expect going forward with Clyde EdwardsHelaire. As we've discussed, this is going to be a committee running back where Clyde EdwardsHelaire will be the lead running back in this committee between Darrell Williams as well going forward. I mean, look at what we got from Darrell Williams this past week. Yes, he himself gets to 11 fantasy points. He gets there with the long reception. I mean, really, it was 3 targets for Darrell Williams and 5 carries as well. So, yeah, Clyde EdwardsHelaire is still getting 65, 70% of the touches in this backfield. But I think that you just know what Clyde EdwardsHelaire is at this point. You're starting him, hoping for the touchdown in the very productive offense. And now, our running back 20, someone that we have been just disrespecting every single week as of late, Devontae Freeman. I mean, with Devontae Freeman, I just have to be on the record. I embarrassed myself telling so many people to go through and bench him. And he was the running back 10 this past week. He was a low-end running back 1. And I was telling people to play bad running backs over Devontae Freeman as well. I was telling people to play Myles Gaskin over Freeman, and I wasn't even thinking about it. And this is despite Devontae Freeman coming out in the previous 2 weeks, having 16 carries in each game. Now, he kind of changes the role that you see a little bit in Baltimore. He is the feature down running back this past week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You don't really get Latavius Murray at all, and he sees 8 targets out of the backfield as well. I think Freeman is now a top 24 running back for us. It's a very tough matchup against the Cleveland Browns. Last time we saw him against Cleveland, just 2 weeks ago, 16 carries, 52 rushing yards, 1 reception, 8 receiving yards for a flat 7 fantasy points. Not great, but this is going to be a productive offense. I think you can go through start Freeman if you need to. And now our next running back in this year, I just don't know where to rank him. I think you have to be worried. James Robinson against the Tennessee Titans. Now with James Robinson, it's difficult to go through and have an accurate ranking on him. I will say if we get reports that James Robinson should see a full workload this week, of course, he skyrockets in these rankings. If reports come out this week that James Robinson is 100% healthy, he is going to be skyrocketing up into that same range as someone like Josh Jacobs. Now, the issue with James Robinson is this is a running back not dealing with one injury, but dealing with a multitude of injuries, playing through them. And at the same time, Urban Meyer is a donkey. James Robinson fumbles at the beginning of this past game. Against the Rams, he sees 8 carries and 1 reception. That's not fine for any offense, let alone the Jacksonville Jaguars that are really not going to have any touchdown upside at all. No trips to the red zone. I don't know what there is to say with James Robinson. We have to just continue to read the reports throughout the week. I'm going to be going through and giving y'all updates. I would be very hesitant to go through and play James Robinson, though, because I don't know what the workload is going to look like. And now let's go down to our next tier. Let's go over to some committee running backs. Let's start it off with A.J. Dillon going up against the Chicago Bears. With A.J. Dillon, I am assuming that he is going to be a running back that is coming out and he is being a, I don't want to say full-on 50-50 split running back with Aaron Jones, but close to it. I think A.J. Dillon here gets close to 50% of the snaps and, maybe 40 to 50% of the touches. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Mason, why are you ranking him this far behind Aaron Jones then? The reason for that is, historically speaking, in Green Bay, I know it's a little bit of a different scenario with a little bit of a different running back, but you have seen Aaron Jones always be a committee running back. Aaron Jones has always been a committee running back. And back in 2017, back in 2018, I didn't understand it. I was the guy screaming, you can't draft Aaron Jones in round 1. He is not going to be seeing 70% of the touches in his backfield. I was the clown with that analysis. That is not the way to look at it. You're chasing the valuable touches in the offense. I think you have to be worried about A.J. Dillon being pigeonholed to that Jamal Williams role when there's a fully healthy Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon getting about 12 carries out of the backfield and seeing Aaron Jones as the guy in the red zone and as the guy in the receiving game. Because that's essentially what we've had every week that Aaron Jones has been fully healthy. And that was not this past week because, the week before the bye, Aaron Jones was not fully healthy. It's also a tough matchup against the Chicago Bears. I think you can start A.J. Dillon. I would be hesitant, though. And keep in mind, nobody in that 2020 Dynasty offseason liked A.J. Dillon as much as I did. When he was going at the beginning of the 3rd round in 12-team Superflex Dynasty rookie drafts, I was hoarding A.J. Dillon everywhere. I like A.J. Dillon. Trust me. But to go through and assume that he's the guy over Aaron Jones at this point, very rich. Kareem Hunt, running back 23 against the Baltimore Ravens. We got to see if Kareem Hunt's fully healthy. Tough matchup against the Ravens as well. He did not have the role the week prior. I am expecting an expanded role with his calf injury 1 week further behind him. That's why his first week back, when he was playing the Baltimore Ravens for the bye week, I did not include him in the top 24 running backs after a disappointing week. Now we're going to be bumping him up because we're expecting he's going to be a little bit healthier. And now let's go down one more spot. Let's go to our running back 24. We'll throw Jamal Williams in here mainly as a placeholder, telling people that the reason DeAndre Swift's not on this list is because I'm expecting Swift not to play. With Jamal Williams, he has to be less exciting than what I thought he was last week. Last week, we ranked him as a mid-running back 2 because we were expecting that he was going to see a similar workload to someone like David Montgomery in terms of the snaps that he was going to play. We were wrong. Jamal Williams played 50% of the snaps in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. In a tough matchup against the Denver Broncos, we would look to go through and avoid Jamal Williams if we can. And of course, thank you all so much for everybody coming out to the live stream. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out so much. Please let me know what your record is down below. I think that should be it. We will be live streaming, of course, tonight as we are every single night. Really hope you all have a great night, and we see you out in the live stream sometime soon.